Welcome to the Shepherd's Rest DockTalk. This is episode 145.
I'm Cam and this is Julie.
Yes, this is the Torah portion discussion for this week for Shelach. Is that right? Shelach? Yes, I know I hardly ever say it, but there we go. For Shelach. And if you would like to listen to last year's, it's 99 A and B, and the year before that is 50 A and B.
So we are going into Numbers 13, 14, and 15. It's funny because last year, if you look at 99, we didn't talk about the spies, which was kind of funny since that's, the big thing.
Yeah.
So we're going to start this year
with the spies.
Numbers 13, 1 and 2 is where we'll start. It says, "And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the children of Israel. Send one man from each tribe of their fathers, every one a leader among them." Now we know that the men that were chosen were leaders, but they're not the military leaders that we have from the first and second Numbers, which tells you this was not a military recruitment.
Reconnaissance or whatever
right,
it's called.
recon. It was not a military recon.
Yeah.
They're going out to look at what's there. Well, I had the thought like this. The Lord is going to allow them to go out to see what's there. He promised a land flowing with milk and honey. They're going to go see that it is a land of milk and honey. They're also going to see the giants. The Lord's letting them see the giants. Now we see in Deuteronomy 1, 22 to I think 30, it talks about how Israel, the people, came to Moses and the Lord asking, hey, could we send a reconnaissance group out just to see if it's good? And not so much if, but to see how it's good, how we're going to go about implementing what you've given us the instructions to do. Here we have the Lord, here it's presented as if the Lord tells Moses, send them out. But really it's more like the Lord's giving permission. And we know this from Deuteronomy 1.
Right.
So again, we have the spies going out, looking, and they see the giants. Now here's where my brain went. So really, when you think about them at the water's edge, okay, after they left Egypt, they're at the Red Sea, and what do they see?
The sea. Oh, they see the sea.
Okay, you know what I'm saying? They just see water.
Okay.
And this is actually a testimony to everyone standing behind them, right? They're like, well, here we go. Oh, wait, we can't go anywhere. So the Lord showed them the obstacle, and then the Lord defeats the obstacle.
So this is the pattern.
Yes, this is the pattern.
So they were in Egypt. There's the obstacle. He defeated that obstacle. Now's the water. Yeah, got it.
Okay, so now they're in the land. Thank you. Thank God she interprets for me. So now we're at the land. And the Lord, if he did not allow them to see the giants and see the obstacles, then a lot of his fighting on their behalf would be missed. Yes?
Also, if they were to display in that moment sudden terror and fear, they would be defeated. And the entire nation would be defeated. So it's like, I'm going to show you what's before you to prepare you.
Yeah.
And when you go in it with an attitude of, I know this from like running marathons, and so do you.
Right.
The first one is terrible.
Yeah.
But once you go into the second one or the third one or whatever, you know what to expect. And you trust the training.
Right.
The Lord is like their training. You
good.
Trust the training.
Yes.
So you know that you've seen it here, and you know it's going to happen here.
Right. Love it. So had they not seen the giants, they would have missed that. I see it kind of like a car accident. If I'm driving down the road and I get stopped or sidetracked, the Lord may sidetrack me, and then there's an accident that he saved me from up there. I wouldn't know that. I would miss it. He still saved me, but I don't know it.
Right.
Versus I'm driving down the road and I see a horrible accident that happens, and I had just done something that suddenly makes me realize I could have been right there.
Right.
That's a whole different type of, thank you, Lord. You kept me. So I saw that with the giants, where he's letting them see them so they understand what he's fought. Remember the ark went before them.
Right.
What he's fighting.
What he's about to do.
Right. As we talked before, he already conquered the gods, and they're conquering their flesh. That's a lifelong thing. And now they're going to have these giants, the things that they can see, the tangible. He's going to conquer them also.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were going to say something just a minute ago?
Right. So they focused on what was negative about the land instead of what was positive. You
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And so many times that's exactly what we do. We're in a situation, instead of being thankful in all things, understanding that it's for our learning or for our, for
Right.
some bigger message or lesson that we're going to have. We focus on just the negative, and then we just hone in on that and just, It's like the person that you can say 10 things to. One of them was negative and 9 were positive, but all they heard was the negative.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if we actually look at what the report was in 13, we see that in 13:27, we see where this report's being given. And really, at first, all they're doing is stating facts. But again, what perspective of that fact are you going to have? They're saying the land is great. It is flowing with milk and honey. There are some giants. There's some high walls. I mean, they taught who's there. Those weren't lies. I mean, if you didn't say who was there, you'd be lying.
Right.
But by
another
presenting,
thing that gets
these
us
are the
in
people that were there. Remember, they had just had a fight with Amalekites. Amalekites. Yeah, they just had a fight in chapter 17 of Exodus. Okay, granted, it's about a year from this time, but the point is, that's who they had a fight with, and they won. Now they're in the land. They already won. They've already beat them.
Right.
So this should not be a scary thing. But again, it goes back to that perspective where they see it as, oh, no.
And I love what Joshua and Caleb do. They, like you said, they state the facts and say, yes, there are the giants in the land, but they do it in a way of, but we serve the living God. And if the living God wants to give it to us, who are we to say we can't defeat them?
Why would we say? We're just this is the next step in his promise.
Right.
Yeah. In verse 9, it says, only do not rebel against the Lord, nor fear the people of the land, for they are our bread. Their defense is turned away from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. There's 2 things about this that I love. Caleb and Joshua's perspective is they're our bread. But if we look up in chapter 13, verse 33, the 10 spies their perspective is we saw the Nephilim, sons of Anak, of the Nephilim, and we were like grasshoppers in our eyes, so we were in theirs. They're basically saying, they care what they look like in their eyes. It says, in our eyes to them, we're grasshoppers, therefore they see us like grasshoppers. It's how they see themselves. Mm-hmm. The perspective is, look at what we look like in their eyes. They don't know what they look like in their eyes. Look, we don't know what we look like in the Lord's eyes, except for he tells us.
Yeah.
This is how you look when you behave this way.
Right.
This is how you look when you behave this way. Otherwise, we cannot determine how other people see us. The perspective is wrong. Caleb and Joshua, they say, how does this look through the Lord's eyes? Not through our eyes.
Right.
But there's a word in here, the bread, but then in 14:9, it says their defense is turned away from them. Well, the word for defense there can also mean a shadow. Mm-hmm. Now, here's why I had like the light bulb. Wait, if their shadow is gone, a shadow can only reflect what is present.
Right.
Like we know the heavenlies, the earthly is only a shadow of the heavenlies. The Nephilim, if you go on the understanding that they have a spiritual element to them, mm-hmm. if their shadow is gone, it means their reality is gone as well. And that's exactly what was supposed to happen when the Lord brought them in. They were going to be conquered. So not only are they saying, oh, they'll just be too weak, they're basically saying they're wiped off, they're gone.
Yeah.
Had they gone in at this time, I don't know, but it's very possible that David would have never had the Goliath moment.
Yeah.
Because they may have wiped them all out. 1 and 2, that pattern would have looked different. And if that pattern looked different, we might find that Israel today wouldn't be fighting the giants. And again, we know that when they go in with Joshua's time, they don't conquer all the giants. In other words, it's just a pattern of not always conquering all the giants. It's not going to happen until our salvation, present Yeshua, mm-hmm. returns and then completely does away with that.
Right. That's why he has to do it by himself.
Right. Exactly. He's like, I got this. There was another point, kind of midrash, I want to bring up. And that's in chapter 14, 11 on down, where we basically see the Lord like, hey, I'm tired of dealing with these people who won't trust me, though I show them over and over and over again that I'm trustworthy. They don't want to trust me. But they want to go back to the comfortable, right? They want to go back to what they're used to. Right. Slavery is the comfortable.
Right.
Having to fight, they're not so interested in that. But we have where the Lord tells Moses, and he says, let me strike them, and this is verse 12, let me strike them with pestilence and disinherit them, and make you a nation greater and mightier than they. Now this should ring a bell back in Exodus 32, where the Lord's like, step aside, be quiet, let me do away with them, and I'll just bring all of Israel out of you, right? So this is the second time. And that made the light bulb go on, and that was this. I have no idea, just a thought. You know, in Numbers 30 talks about making a vow, the wife or the daughter. Mm-hmm. And when they hear it, they either speak against it or they support it. All right? All right. Back in Exodus 32, the people were before like, oh, God, we just want to go back to Egypt, right?
Right.
Give us, make us another God. At that point, Moses pleads for them. Their words, he speaks against them. He stops the vow immediately. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't allow it to happen. Here, they're like, well, we should just die. Chapter 14, we should just die in the desert, right? Or at least let's die in Egypt. All right? The Lord's like, oh, fine.
Yeah. You said it.
And Moses again speaks, but he does not remove their vow. He just changes it, not for the people's sake, but for the Lord's sake. And he says, don't kill them all at once. Mm-hmm. That will look bad. Go on and give them what they asked for. They promised they're going to do this. Let them fulfill that. Let them die in the wilderness. Absolutely. Just spread it out.
Yeah.
Spread it out over the years.
Yeah.
And then that way Egypt won't look and go, oh, you couldn't do it.
Oh my gosh. It's the same idea of, he says, when I bring you into the land, I'm not going to drive you're not going to drive everything out at once, because it's going to be little by little, or the animals would overtake you.
Right.
It's the same thing with, he couldn't just wipe out that whole generation at once.
Right.
Because then the younger generation, they wouldn't even know what to do.
Right.
So it had to be this gradual thing of the older dying off and the newer taking over.
Right. So, anyway, I just kind of saw that as the vow, like supporting the vow and then not supporting the vow. Yeah.
Very good.
And one other thing about that verse where the Lord's saying he's going to put the pestilence on them, Aleph Beta, Rabbi Foreman, they had this great aspect about this verse and talking about the word for pestilent, that this word is what's used back with the plagues.
Okay.
In Egypt. So kind of equating how, look, y'all want to act like Egypt? Fine. You're going to get the plagues that Egypt got. And then a little bit further down in 14, where the Lord says, you've tried me these 10 times, again linking that with 10 plagues.
10 plagues.
And the last plague was death, right?
Yeah.
And so they're going to get the death.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then the other thing that I saw in here is power. We don't hear much about power except for in Egypt, because that's how people understood the power of the gods. Mm-hmm. And now we have this generation that's going to die, and he's talking about the power again. Because that power is what's going to speak to those who are still in Egypt, who remain. Because remember, the whole thing of pulling them out of Egypt the way they did in that long process was so that Egypt would know that he was the living God. Right, it was a testimony for them. So again, we have that turned over to this generation that's going to die, is going to be a testimony to the generation that's staying, that younger generation.
Right. And
we see that pattern of the miracles. I mean, the patterns are just incredible. Those in Egypt had the miracles, but it didn't really. A lot of them didn't. It didn't click. Here we have all these miracles happening in the wilderness, but for Lot it didn't click.
Yeah.
During Yeshua's time, we had all the miracles, but for Lot it didn't click. It was that second generation, right? So here's my suggestion: what is to say it is or isn't when we have the end with the tribulation? That again is going to be all these miracles.
Right.
But they're just not going to get it. They're not going to be repentant. You're going to have that remnant that goes into that next generation, which ends up being the generation of the millennium.
Right. And I was just going to ask, how does this fit into the final pattern?
And then in the millennium, we know from Genesis. Well, you got to know it from, right? Know the end from the beginning.
Yeah.
From Revelation 20, I can't think of the verse, it'll be right here, that the Lord has just a remnant even at the end of the 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So it's that
the enemy surrounds the remnant.
Right. And that enemy has been living in unbelievable paradise, right? Miracles for 1,000 years.
That enemy.
The people who become the enemy. So those are the ways you can take what's happening here and apply it to even the end times. Because the tribulation is not the end all for events. It's the end of the millennium.
It's the birth that goes into the next.
Yes, exactly, which was Egypt into the next.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
I just have one thing that I wanted to
absolutely.
say, just as an encouragement. A couple of years ago, when we were doing one of our Bible studies, I was asked to teach that night, and I studied. It was the spies.
Oh yeah.
And this really must have impressed upon me what the Lord gave me out of it, because I keep going back to it all the time. But it was like, listen, you know how he took Jacob and Jacob's whole family out of the land, and then they were cultivated, grew into a nation in Egypt, and then he's sending them back into the land.
Right.
The Lord really impressed on me that we too are going to be like that. Yeah. Like his land, spiritual land, is the assemblies, is the church. Don't be surprised if he doesn't send us back in one way or another to take the land.
Yeah, to minister, to correct,
take the land.
Get the giants out.
Yes. There were giants. So Jacob knew he was a sojourner.
Right.
And it was not yet his land.
Right.
Right? So he was brought out, made a nation, going back in.
Right.
I just wouldn't be surprised if we see that pattern and the Lord doesn't ask us to do some things that may be a little bit surprising, where what we came out of is concerned.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that's going to look like. I have no idea. But he just really impressed on me that I'm going to send you back. Do not be afraid of the giants.
Yeah. And I would think it could possibly look different in all different points. For all different people.
Right.
It could
For all
look
different people. Exactly.
Yeah. But every piece of that puzzle that we each have makes that whole of the Israel moving across the land.
Right. Because, we're not meant to stay in the wilderness.
Right. It's just
Israel
for a time
wasn't,
and a season.
so it's for a time and a season, and then it's like, all right, let's go take the land.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of DockTalk. It was a good one.
Yeah.
Always. I love this one, obviously.
I know, there's so much. Oh.
I know. Come on Friday night, and we'll talk some more. All right. Well, we will see you next time, and we hope you have a fantastic week. Shalom.